O'Donnell, and this is County Board Wrap-Up. Each month, the County Board Chair and her guest, another board member, answer our questions about the key decisions that the board takes at its monthly meetings. Today, we're joined by newly named Board Chair Katie Cristol and newly named Vice Chair Dorsey. Both of you, thank you very much for joining us, and congratulations and welcome.
Thanks, Kara.
Our discussion today is going to touch on the Chair's Childcare Initiative, the county's priorities for this year's legislative session, a donation made by a caring Arlingtonian that's going to help neighbors become citizens, and quite a bit more. But first, Katie, how's it feel to be chair of the board? How'd the first meeting go? That kind of thing.
Absolutely. Well, we've got a good team continuing. We have a new colleague, Eric Gutschall, but otherwise it's a great dynamic, I think. We had a nice, successful first meeting. We'll see how it goes when things start to heat up, especially with budget sessions and budget season later in the year. But for now, I think we're off to a strong start.
One thing that you really kind of got rolling right off the bat is this Childcare Initiative. We had a meeting last week at Central Library. How did that go? And tell me a little bit about this initiative.
Sure. Yeah. So this work has been underway in some form or fashion for probably about a year now. We started last year with the approval of a new full-time employee in our community planning, housing, and development team, as well as designating a series of actions we were looking for this year. The Childcare Initiative is now in the incredibly competent hands of some leadership from the Department of Human Services, who have brought together both a leadership team and a working group that draws on, I believe, over 25 different agencies and organizations. They have created a draft action plan for us, organized around the goals of accessibility, availability, and quality as our three guiding lights for how we want to seek to expand the childcare supply in Arlington County. And last Thursday, January 25th, was an opportunity to roll out that action plan and start to get some feedback from the community. It was really an exciting night, a large turnout, an enthusiastic turnout. I think a turnout that actually reflected the full diversity of Arlington County, which was inspiring to see. And a lot of people have a lot of opinions and experiences and feedback for us about where we need to go to be expanding supply and affordable quality supply of childcare in Arlington.
Now, you've touched on this a little bit, but what would you say are the biggest challenges to childcare in Arlington? You know, the affordability, the growth needed, but what are you hearing from the residents?
Sure. So affordability, of course, is one of the biggest challenges. And what's interesting is that's all the way up and down the economic spectrum. You know, even for middle class or even upper class families, you have childcare, especially if you're looking at more than one child or a very young child, that costs more than rent or a mortgage payment on a monthly basis. So as we seek to expand supply, one of our biggest challenges is going to be how do we as government or with partners try to tackle some of the biggest drivers of cost, which of course comes back to rent. So we'll be looking at a series of potential land use or regulatory strategies that might help us tackle that. And one of the challenges as well to starting a child care center can sometimes be the regulatory burden. We want to keep quality high. That's inarguable among everyone who's at the table here. But it's also important for us to look afresh with a new eye at some of our standards and make sure that they all are driving quality and that in some, they aren't inadvertently creating obstacles and barriers, which I think they may be doing now.
And you know, I applaud the chair for coming up with this as a focus of our county, because you know, it's often overlooked how unique childcare is as being a disproportionately expensive thing for families. You know, while everything is expensive in Arlington, we're a high-cost area, we also happen to be a region that has the most expensive childcare in the entire country. And you know, eating up a disproportionate amount of a family's budget means that this is a huge concern, and it has real-world effects. It means that sometimes parents who would prefer to be in the labor force cannot, because they have to actually be home. That's the more affordable version of childcare that they can actually access. So it really distorts a lot of things in our economy and in our community and disrupts families to a tremendous degree. And you know, if we can do anything to sort of help bridge that gap between the supply and the demand and make things at least more stable from a cost perspective, we'll be doing a great service for our residents.
What kind of role can really we as county government play in making, kind of alleviating some of these concerns a little bit?
Well, you know, I think the focus on supply is really key, because there clearly is a demand deficit. There is a gap, and that gap certainly puts upward pressures on prices. And if we can figure out how through zoning and permitting and facilitating the creation of more childcare, coming up with innovative solutions that maybe involve the business community and underutilized building resources. Then we can, deal with affordability and supply at the same time and just, take the stress out. I can tell you, as someone who's put 2 kids through childcare, you spend a lot of work trying to find a good solution. And if we can ease that burden, I'll feel good about our role as public servants.
I think that's exactly right. And there's some connecting we can do between supply and demand.
Yeah.
I think people are sometimes surprised to know that there is no centralized point of access between consumers and providers, or coordination of wait list or slot list. And so, for a parent, it's sort of every man and woman for themselves and trying to figure it out. So there's a role we can play not only in reducing the regulatory burden or even helping along with some land use strategies, the creation or expansion of supply, but also in terms of really coordinating the supply and demand that might already be there.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot about this in the
We
months
hope so,
to
too.
come. But switching gears a little bit from childcare priorities to legislative priorities, as the General Assembly kind of works through its priorities, Arlington, of course, has a lot of issues at the table. What role does really the county board play in influencing or coordinating with the General Assembly in Richmond?
Absolutely. So the legislative session's hallmark is that it is short. They consider literally thousands of bills in a matter of weeks. And so one of the most important roles that we can play is trying to organize ourselves in advance and trying to have that conversation with our legislators in advance about what some of our priorities are. Every year in the fall or early winter timeframe, at the end of the calendar year, we adopt a legislative package informed by commissions, informed by citizen comment about our priorities for the session ahead. And then we meet with our General Assembly members before the calendar year ends to both share our own priorities and hear a little bit about what they may be planning to advance and to stay informed. Once the session is underway, it is a lot of frenzied conversation. I know we're both in the middle of it right now on a couple of issues. We generally, as board members, are down in Richmond a couple of times during session. We'll be down, all 5 of us, I think, actually, just next week.
That's right, yeah.
And what are some of the big issues that Arlington's priorities right now? Obviously, Metro.
Metro.
Followed by
Metro, and Metro, pretty much.
I mean, Metro has consumed so much oxygen over the course of the last couple of years, and that's going to continue in this session, and really for good reason. It's not just an important priority for Arlington, it's an important priority for all of Northern Virginia, and what we're trying to make the case to the General Assembly, both our delegation and across the state, is it's a big deal for the Commonwealth. Absolutely. And what is required is a level of investment to keep Metro being the engine that keeps the Northern Virginia economy humming and provides the ability for the entire Commonwealth to benefit from the increased receipts that it gets in terms of sales taxes and income taxes that comes from our region being the place that is attracting growth and able to manage that growth through good transportation. So, that's well known to everybody around here, less well known in the General Assembly.
Yeah.
But I think people are coming together and understanding that something needs to be done, and the outgoing governor has shown good leadership in putting something forward that could be discussed. And the current governor is maintained, I think, that priority focus. We've got details, important details to work out, but it is something that we are going to see through till the end.
That's exactly right.
All right. Well, we will stay tuned on that one as well. We're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, Clarendon's core gets a makeover, and a Potomac Yard Park gets a name and a master plan. Stay with us. Welcome back to County Board Wrap-Up, our monthly chat with the county board members about some of the important actions they took at their monthly meetings, actions that affect you, your neighbors, and your community. With us here today are Board Chair Katie Cristol and Vice Chair Christian Dorsey. Thank you once again for being here. Let's talk about Clarendon. We're going to start seeing a lot of changes in the coming years, specifically with Market Common.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the process that went through at this meeting.
So Market Common, the owners of it, an outfit that is primarily focused on retail and shopping centers across the country, has some plans for a phase 2 to develop some always planned for but not yet completed improvements to the Market Common blocks just west of Whole Foods. We have the former education building, which it's got this kind of old industrial look that they're going to rehab with some newer windows and give it a newer architectural treatment, but also that pays homage to the past. But more importantly, they're going to have that building serve a few key functions that will really improve the neighborhood, creating some wider sidewalks on Wilson Boulevard. Anyone who's been there knows that those are just a couple of feet in some
Difficult to
places.
navigate.
It's
Yeah.
awful, right? Try doing that with a stroller, speaking of childcare. But they're also going to create a sense of place by having a centralized building entrance on Edgewood Street, creating some public plaza improvements in the front of that building. The plans are available online. I think they're exciting to look at how they're not really doing anything new. They're not building anything new substantially. They're just adding a floor here, doing some build outs to create a much better building. And the really great thing, people who are into historic preservation know that World War II era engravers building.
I was just going to ask about that, where there's really going to be an effort to...
Yeah, that facade is
Preserve that
essentially going to be
facade.
preserved. Yeah. So, from a historical preservation standpoint, we have in a previous process years ago determined that that building was an essential piece of our historic inventory. And fortunately, it worked well within a plan to preserve that facade with some improvements, and they're going to make a really funky area. I like it.
To have the old and new side by side.
It sounds really exciting. Now, what kind of public process or move forward from here? And also, what kind of timeline are we looking at?
Absolutely. So, this was a project much like any of our site plans or site plans amendments that are engaged and really shepherded by the Site Plan Review Committee, which brings together members of the Planning Commission, in this case, the Historic Affairs and Landmark Review Board, as well as folks like the pedestrian advisory groups who are really interested in, as Christian was mentioning, the sidewalk improvements. There was also significant involvement from the neighboring civic associations, which we appreciate. We know, for example, anytime there's a potential roof deck use, that definitely brings some concerns to the fore. And so these processes are really designed to have an opportunity to hash through some of those. But I think what's probably one of the most exciting things here, as Christian was talking about, is really this opportunity to enliven the retail environment in Clarendon. We certainly watch with a keen eye and interest some of the transitions that might be happening in the retail area in Clarendon. We know it can be a challenging environment for restaurants sometimes to thrive and to stay, to say nothing of the changes in retail overall, right? As we all start buying our hammers from Amazon.com, we're now seeing fewer hardware stores, for example. And I think what this site really embodies is this notion that one of the best ways we can support retail is to create environments that are attractive for pedestrians to come, to stay, to linger, whether it's in the new arcade that we'll see there that will be enlivened by lights and activity, or whether it's something as simple but as fundamental as Christian was describing as those wider sidewalks. So it's really about trying to create a physical place that supports those retail.
A little more of a destination instead of just a run into the store, make it somewhere you want to spend an afternoon or longer. We're seeing that a lot in Arlington with Ballston Quarter.
Yeah.
Here with Market Common, we just had some big improvements over in Pentagon Row and the Pentagon City Mall.
Right.
So we can really make this kind of clusters of retail and entertainment destinations, so to speak.
And what's exciting about all of these examples that you mentioned, Kara, we have owners, developers of these properties which really know the industry and are at the forefront of the industry. So while retail is a great concern for many of us in terms of the policies that we've instituted beforehand, at the very least, the operators of these destination establishments are really thinking about what retail is going to look like in the future so that the improvements that they make today will be lasting. And we won't be dealing with some of the issues that other places which have been built around malls in the historic sense are really struggling. Hopefully we will be at the the end of the curve where we're sort of riding the wave of the future instead of trying to hold on to the past.
All right, well, it's going to be interesting to see. But of course, our green space is also very important and very treasured here in Arlington. So we're seeing some changes with a park as well, with the Short Bridge Park. Tell me a little bit about that over in Potomac Yard.
So Short Bridge, we had two actions where we actually named, recommended, or accepted the recommendation from I guess it was Parks and Recreation Commission along with the HALRB to name this area that we're going to master plan, calling it Short Bridge Park, an homage, if you will, to Long Bridge Park. So that's the sort of counterbalance there, and you know it makes sense in the sense that there is a decommissioned railroad bridge, even though no one really would know it is one, but that's sort of a central feature.
The historic nature of it.
That's right.
Yeah, historic uses.
So this is a great way where we do the best with what we can in terms of limited spaces. We've got an area that's right by 4 Mile Run, near the river, adjacent to the city of Alexandria and the Potomac Yard area. We have long desired that this be a park, and there's been some modest improvements put on it to date to make it function as one, but really not adequate. So we are going to enliven the trails, create a connection to the water, create a really usable park that will hopefully one day, if the city of Alexandria moves forward with their development processes, create really a very large, natural, interesting part of our park system, regional park system, that hopefully will be a destination for many.
So this is designed to be more of a just true green space as opposed to the recreational fields, the baseball, basketball courts, that kind of thing that we see in some other park areas.
Yeah, I think that's right. Although there will be a couple of amenities.
Yeah.
One of the ones that I think is especially exciting and relevant to a lot of conversations we've been having recently is a dog run.
The dog run.
Of course.
So as we both work on our new plan for our Places and Spaces, or POPs, the updated Public Spaces Master Plan, one of the big themes and big needs that has come out is the desire for more spaces where dogs can be off-leash, especially. Traditionally, our standards for dog parks, which are the only places in the county where dogs can legally be off-leash, require a lot of land, a pretty big footprint. And so we're piloting a new idea of a dog run, which is sort of a more urban area that can maybe prevent the impacts of really heavy dog use from getting into the floodplain or the resource production area, but still provide that great amenity for residents of our more urban areas whom we know feel very strongly about their canine members of the family.
Absolutely. All right, we will wait to see on that one as well. We're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about a civic-minded resident's gift to Arlingtonians seeking to become citizens. Stay with us. Welcome back to County Board Wrap-Up, where each month we take a closer look at some of the key decisions the board takes at its monthly meeting. Joining us today is County Board Chair Katie Cristol and Vice Chair Dorsey. Thank you both once again. Now, the board approved a donation for the so-called Citizenship Scholarship, which is a little bit of a tongue twister, I'm going to admit, but I love this story. This is just the sweetest thing ever. Tell us a little bit about this donation.
We love this story too,
Yeah.
I think. So some residents may know, some may not, that when you want to become an American citizen, there is a filing fee to do so, a federal filing fee of $725. And for some folks in our community, that can be prohibitively expensive. And when it is expensive to someone who can't afford it, they delay becoming a citizen. And we have a resident who saw that gap and stepped in to fill it and to create a citizenship scholarship. That is a tongue twister, but very important, that will be administered by our Department of Human Services to help residents who need it meet that filing fee cost and become citizens faster.
And this was an anonymous donor, correct?
Absolutely. And just a resident of our community filling a need that exists and coming up with just a really great way to do it. Since our Department of Human Services is already in the business of doing income certifications, this money can truly be directed to those new Americans who are in need, and this resident can rest with the comfort of knowing that her generosity, her philanthropy is actually connecting, filling a gap. People who are otherwise qualified and ready to become new Americans, making sure that can happen as expeditiously as possible. Everybody who's heard about this has had the same reaction. They love this story, they love this anonymous donor, and I think probably what I don't love is that we can't acknowledge her publicly because it's a tremendously helpful thing.
And now how does this work? Will folks go in and apply for this scholarship, or how's the process going to work?
Absolutely. So first we should say anybody who thinks they may qualify, we hope they'll visit the county website and search Immigration Scholarship, where they can find more in details and information about how to embark. But at a high level, to qualify, you'll need to live in Arlington and meet an income limit to do so. But our Department of Human Services is also a great place to learn about all kinds of services that might be available for our new American population. This is, of course, a conversation we've had quite a bit in recent months, given the national conversation, but we do have an immigration webpage on our county homepage as well that provides information about English language classes, citizenship classes, legal services for immigrants, as well as a place where you can find some of the board statements over the past couple of years about how we truly believe that immigrants make our community stronger and better. And we think this Act from the Citizen really reinforces that core belief about who Arlington is.
And Arlington's whole belief of being a truly inclusive, welcoming community, as we've said many times in the past. So is the scholarship active now? If someone went on to the website today, they could start that ball rolling with the process? Or?
Absolutely. I mean, it's available for people who are otherwise meeting the criteria, which are stated and laid out where Katie indicated, and it's exciting. Hopefully, some point soon, we'll hear reports of people who've been able to take advantage of this scholarship and accelerate their process of becoming citizens. As we all know, it's a process that takes a very long time. And this resident had the foresight to recognize it's an extra indignity if at the end of that process, or at some point during that process, it's a filing fee, which becomes a barrier towards your continuing, and just a tremendous way to fill that gap.
Now, did this donor, what was her reasoning coming forward? What did she say when she said, "I'd like to do this"? Did she have a neighbor, or do we know?
I don't know the backstory. Do you?
I don't think either.
Okay.
I think this is someone who's chosen to make their gift and not to say a whole lot more. But my hope, at least, is that no matter who you are in Arlington, you can look to her example and draw some inspiration about how you can help, and whatever that issue might be, or whatever the means that you have to put towards it. Maybe it's your time instead of money. That you'll be inspired by whatever motivates you, just as whatever motivated her to step up and help serve others.
And we should probably be clear, in this case, the money is being administered by our Department of Human Services. The lesson here is not that you give to government. The lesson is that you give to your passion.
Exactly.
And wherever that need is being filled in the nonprofit community or wherever else, that's what we encourage. That's what's heartwarming. In this case, actually, our Department of Human Services is the best equipped to actually administer this, but I don't want people to feel like we are encouraging people to come out and give to government,
right?
Even though if you want to,
we're going to turn it down. Right? But this is just truly an act of goodwill from this individual, and it'll be very interesting to meet our new citizens who are able to benefit from this
exactly
program.
right. Just last year, Arlington, along with USCIS, hosted a naturalization ceremony, which for me was an absolute high point of 2017. To see folks, many of whom have lived in the United States and sometimes even in the region of Arlington for decades, to come forward to tell their story and to desire to be Americans. It's an incredibly patriotic thing.
All right, well, that sounds like a perfect note to end on for this particular episode. We have come to the end of another County Board wrap-up. Thank you, Katie and Christian, for joining us to kick off 2018 with some special insights into the board's actions from the January meeting. We'll see you again next month when the chair and her guest will be discussing the proposed budget for fiscal year 2019, which the county manager will present at its February meeting. You can watch county board meetings live streamed or archived on our website, arlingtonva.us. Just search County Board. And remember, tell us what you think about the issues and more by going to topics.arlingtonva.us/engage. We'll see you next month.